But here is the important bit. At this point, you have to ask yourself, why? Why do you want that goal? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to help you decide on what goals you want in life. And it's a continuation from my previous video where I discussed how to help you determine the steps to put in place to reach an end goal of yours. And I highly recommend you watch that video too, which will be linked above. So, how do you decide on an end goal and be confident that it's what you truly want? Well, I have an exercise that will help. So firstly, what I recommend is you get a blank piece of paper, a pen, and go somewhere quiet where ideally you won't be disturbed and up to potentially an hour. And what you need to do is have a good think about what your end goal will be. And once you eventually have thought of this end goal in mind, then write it down on the top of the piece of paper. Okay, but here is the important bit. At this point, you have to ask yourself, why? Why do you want that goal? And what's paramount here is that you're being truly honest with yourself when answering these questions. And this is why I recommend you do it by yourself, because if there are people either helping you or simply in the same room with what you're thinking, you might be inclined not to answer truthfully. And actually, it's a massive shame because many people's goals are influenced by other people and actually not truly what they really want themselves. So really paramount, you do this by yourself. Okay, so I'm going to now speak you through this whole process with an example. And it's going to be an example which will be many people's goals in life, and that is to make a lot of money. And we're going to start asking why at each stage and go deeper, deeper and deeper. But just be aware, this is of course a made-up example. For you guys, it will be completely different, but it's just an example showing you the framework. Okay, so let's start with that example. So the top will be, I want lots of money. So when you ask the person why, well, they might say, because I want to buy lots of nice yachts and supercars, Lamborghinis, etc. So the next step will be to ask again, why? Why do you want those yachts and Lamborghinis? And let's say their answer is, because it's cool. So at this stage, we're now 2 steps down. But what's important is we don't just keep asking why. We can also flesh out each step too. So what's important is to also make sure that what they just said, what you yourself have said in this scenario, is actually factually correct and to justify your statement. Because by doing this, you won't just have a massive list of whys, which ultimately it is all nonsense. So make sure that you are checking yourself and check that what you're saying is as accurate as possible. So in this example here about the it's cool, it could be who? To you? To the person writing this down? How much so? Are you a massive car fanatic or yacht fanatic? And what will probably happen here for most people who pick this scenario, which by the way is many people in the world who want these things, they'll probably go, well, actually, how often do they look up these things in their spare time? Probably quite infrequently. They're probably not actually a massive car fan. By doing this, hopefully you yourself will realize, actually, I don't particularly want the car, but why did I say it's cool? So hopefully in this particular scenario, you might then be, okay, it's not cool to me, but it's because other people will think I'm cool. It's cool to others. So next step would be therefore asking, okay, why do you care that others think it's cool? That's a pretty high up part of your end goal list, and it's about 2 or 3 down. Why is it important to you that others are impressed by your yacht or your car? So let's say the answer was, well, it portrays an image of success. So again, as you're now guessing, you'd ask, why do you care about this image of success? And it might be that it makes you feel happy and confident. And this ultimately is what we're heading towards. That the very bottom of this really starts to break down what it really means to you, this end goal. And hopefully, in most of these scenarios, it comes out to some sort of happiness and some enjoyment from this. But what's crucial here, also for yourself, when breaking this down, is to determine this happiness that you've eventually got to. What kind of happiness is it? Is it a short-term happiness or a long-term happiness? Because let's say for this example about the cars, what you hopefully would then break down from that is that that's a short-term happiness. It's unlikely that for 20, 30, 40 years, everyone's still going, wow, at the car. And then of course, most likely, to you to get from your stage to get to that level of having the chance to buy a yacht or a car will probably take many, many years. So hopefully what you then would deduce from that is that, okay, is that a very sensible end goal, given that when going right down to the bottom, it led to short-term happiness and might have taken you many, many, many years to get there. So what I'm trying to get across here is that it's very important before you go, having an end goal and working out the hows, as I discussed in my previous video, you want to make sure that your actual end goal is something which ultimately you actually want deep down, not just some goal which potentially other people have given to you or one that you simply haven't given enough thought to. What you don't want to do is spend years and years pursuing some end goal which ultimately isn't what you really want. But look, let's try a different example. So let's say again we have the money and then we had the yacht and Lamborghinis. But let's say after the why question, this individual goes, no, I've loved cars my entire life, I've loved yachts my entire life, I spend all my free time looking it up, researching it, that's my hobby. Well then that right there is the next step. It's their hobby, it's their happiness, and then it makes sense. For that person, it would make more sense that would give them longer term happiness. So it makes sense to chase that goal. And a different example could be, okay, again, we want the big money. The next step is why could be for my family and to provide, say, private education for your children. So the why might be, why do you want private education for your children? And the answer might be better education, which of course at this point, once again, fact check, double check yourself, because potentially you think it's better, but actually, is it better? Double check it. Look at these statistics. You might find that it isn't better. It's really important here that you don't bring in your own preconceptions, which might therefore make your list all incorrect. And let's say the answer is, well, no, it's because of good connections you make. Then you need to ask yourself, well, why is it important to have good connections? And of course, you keep going. So hopefully you now understand with those 2 or 3 examples what I'm kind of trying to push for here in terms of you properly making sure your end goal is what you want. And when comparing the first and second example about the person who doesn't care about cars and second one who does care about cars, hopefully you can see that first example is more what I call an empty goal, because ultimately it's not really what they want, it's more a short-term happiness based on other people's feelings towards them. And also the chance of you hitting that end goal, if it's an empty goal, is a lot less likely because you have less hunger, because you don't want it as badly, because it's not really your true goal. And look, this technique does not just apply to massive life goals. You can also apply it to shorter term goals too. That's completely fine, the same logic. It might just have fewer steps to it, but it's the same idea. And finally, on this idea, I'm not saying for certain that if you do this, you'll make many changes, because it might be that you yourself already have a very clear vision of what you want in life, in which case, probably, it won't be many changes. But that's a good thing too. It's revalidating that all of your efforts are still being used in the right areas. But I use the word still there because it's important to know that the end goal of yours can often in life keep changing. Perhaps you had one goal in mind, but then after creating a family, that end goal changed. So by doing this process, what you're ensuring is that your end goal that you're heading towards in life is still the end goal which you actually want to head towards. So my recommendation here would be to do this at least once or perhaps twice a year. So hopefully you enjoyed this and understand now the importance of analysing in depth what your end goal is. And if you'd watched my previous video too, you'll now know how to make sure that it is the correct end goal you want, and once you've made that decision, how to break it down to actually head towards that end goal. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button and bell notification. Feel free to leave any comments and any suggestions for future content. And as ever, onwards and upwards.